All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're talking kitchens.
To kitchens.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this, you're probably running a hotel or a restaurant.
Right, yeah.
And maybe you're looking for some ways to make things run a little smoother, maybe boost your bottom line a bit.
Sure.
And Maurice, who's our expert for this deep dive, he's a hospitality professional, and he has some really interesting things to say about how important your kitchen is.
He really emphasizes that a lot of times we focus so much on what the customer sees.
Oh, yeah,
The dining room,
for sure.
the look, the feel, the service.
Right.
But the real heart of the operation, the place where everything either comes together or falls apart,
Yeah, that's the kit.
is the back of the house, the kitchen.
And it's funny how often that gets overlooked, right?
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. You could have the most beautiful dining room in the world,
Yeah.
but if the service is slow or if the food is coming out wrong, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter at all.
People aren't going to be happy.
Exactly. And that's exactly what Maurice says.
It's such a common mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Owners get so caught up in the front of house
They do.
that they forget about the back.
The aesthetics and the marketing and all that.
They pour money into making it look good, but then the kitchen is an afterthought.
It's like, oh, yeah, we need a kitchen.
Yeah, just stick it in the back somewhere.
Yeah.
And Marie says that's a huge, huge mistake.
It's a costly mistake.
Yeah, it can really hurt your speed, your efficiency.
The morale, too.
Yeah, the morale of your team.
And ultimately, your profits.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in this deep dive, we're really going to dig into what Maurice has to say about how to build a kitchen that really performs.
That's right. And he has some amazing examples from restaurants in France and Europe.
So let's get started.
All right, so first things first. Maurice is very clear about this.
Oh, yeah.
He says, you got to focus on the back of the house, the BOH,
Right.
before you even think about the front of the house.
BOH before FOH, he says.
And he actually recommends allocating a big chunk of your budget to the BOH.
Like, how much are we talking?
He says 60 to 70%.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, I can see why some owners might be hesitant to do that.
right. Because why would you put so much money into something that the customer never even sees?
That's what I'm thinking.
But Maurice makes a really good point here.
What's that?
He says a well-designed kitchen is an investment.
Okay, I see where he's going with this.
It's like, think of it as the engine of your car.
Right.
It doesn't matter how fancy the paint job is if the engine's a clunker.
It's not going to get you very far.
Exactly. A well-equipped kitchen means your team can work faster, they make fewer mistakes,
Makes sense.
and they can serve more customers.
Which means more money for you.
Exactly.
So it's really an investment that pays off in the long run.
And, Maurice is very tech-savvy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he has this really cool tip about using 3D modeling software.
Interesting. What for?
So you can actually simulate how your staff will move around in the kitchen before you even build anything.
Oh, that's smart.
Isn't that clever?
So you can see if there are any bottlenecks or any kind of awkward layouts.
Exactly. You can avoid all those costly redesigns later.
Like a virtual walkthrough of your kitchen.
Exactly. And he has this great example, La Petite Cour in Paris.
Oh, tell me about it.
They reorganized their kitchen, they implemented these modular worktops,
Yeah.
and they reduced their service times by 30%.
Wow, that's a huge improvement.
Imagine that.
Faster table turnover, happier customers.
Less stress for your team.
Everybody wins.
It's a perfect example of how investing in the BOH really pays off in the FOH.
Okay, so BOH before FOH.
Got it. Now, another really interesting point that Maurice makes is that you should think of your kitchen like a production plant.
Like a factory?
Yeah, exactly. Every step, from the moment the ingredients come in to when the dish goes out to the customer, should be optimized.
Okay, I can see that.
Like an assembly line, minimizing waste, maximizing efficiency.
So what are the benefits of this production plant approach?
Well, Maurice says it can significantly reduce your costs.
That makes sense.
Less waste, fewer errors.
And probably a lot less stress for everyone involved.
Right. And he also says that it's really important to involve your chefs in the design process.
Makes sense. They're the ones who are actually going to be working in the kitchen.
They already know the workflow better than anyone.
Exactly.
And they can point out things that you might not even think about.
So practical insights from the people on the ground.
Exactly. And Maurice is a big fan of multifunctional equipment.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, combi ovens, for example.
I've heard those are great.
Yeah, they can do it all.
Steam, bake, roast.
They can even do sous vide.
So one piece of equipment that can replace several others.
Exactly. Saves space, saves money.
Very efficient.
And, speaking of efficiency,
Yeah.
Maurice talks about this restaurant in Paris, Frenchie.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
They have a U-shaped kitchen flow.
Interesting.
So everything moves in a very logical way.
Minimizing movement, minimizing steps.
And they even have a dedicated area for waste sorting.
So they've really thought of everything.
It's all about that smooth flow.
I like it.
Okay, so now let's talk about size.
Okay.
A lot of people think that a bigger kitchen is always better.
Yeah, more space, more possibilities.
But Maurice actually says that's not necessarily true.
Really, why not?
He says that optimizing every square centimeter of a smaller space can actually be more efficient.
So it's not about the size of the kitchen, it's about how you use it.
Exactly. And he has a couple of other really smart points here.
Like what?
First, he says, when you're designing your restaurant, think about where you're going to put the kitchen in relation to your water and electricity mains.
Makes sense.
Because if you can put it close to those things, you're going to save a lot of money on installation costs.
That's a good point. It's all about being strategic.
Right. And then he says, as a general rule, your kitchen should not take up more than 25 to 30% of the total space of your restaurant.
Okay, that's a good guideline.
And to make that work, he recommends frequent deliveries.
Ah, so you don't need as much storage space.
Exactly. Fresh ingredients coming in every day.
Keep things moving.
And he uses Septime, another restaurant in Paris, as an example.
Oh, tell me about it.
They have this amazing high-end restaurant,
Yeah.
and their kitchen is only 18 square meters.
18 square meters. That's tiny.
It's in the basement,
Wow.
but they make it work.
How do they do that?
They have this really clever vertical layout.
Okay.
They use all the vertical space for storage,
Smart.
and they get daily deliveries.
So they've really adapted to their limitations.
Exactly. And it just goes to show that size isn't everything.
It's about how you use the space you have.
Now, another important point that Maurice makes is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution for kitchen design.
Right. Every restaurant is different.
He says you have to tailor your design to your specific needs.
Your menu, your style of service, the space you have available.
Exactly. And he has a few tips for how to do that.
Like what?
Well, first of all, he says you should use adjustable shelving.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
So you can reconfigure your storage space as your needs change.
Flexible.
And he also recommends under-counter refrigeration.
Save space.
Keeps things within easy reach.
Smart.
And then he has this interesting idea about outsourcing.
Outsourcing. In the kitchen.
Yeah, like if you have certain things that are really time-consuming to make.
Oh, I see.
Maybe pastries or certain prep work.
You could outsource that to free up space in your kitchen.
Exactly. And he uses Le Chateaubriand, another Parisian restaurant, as an example.
Okay, what do they do?
They serve 120 covers from a 40-square-meter kitchen.
Wow, that's impressive.
And one of the ways they do that is by having a seasonal menu.
Ah, so they don't need to store as many ingredients.
Yay.
They're only working with what's fresh and in season.
Which also means they can change their menu more often and keep things interesting for their customers.
I like that.
So it's all about being adaptable.
So we've talked about the overall layout of the kitchen, the size.
Right.
Now let's talk about the flow within the kitchen itself.
Yeah, how everything moves.
Because Maurice has a great analogy for this.
What is it?
He says, a well-organized kitchen is like a highway without any traffic jams.
I love that.
Everything's flowing smoothly.
And he says one of the key things is to separate your prep areas from your cooking stations.
So you don't have people bumping into each other.
Exactly.
And you avoid cross-contamination.
And he talks about this idea of the line model.
Okay, what's that?
So basically, the food moves in a straight line from start to finish.
And from the moment it comes in the door to the moment it goes out to the customer.
Exactly. No backtracking, no wasted movement.
Very efficient.
And for restaurants with open kitchens, he recommends central islands.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
They're great for teamwork.
Everyone can communicate easily.
And it creates a more collaborative environment.
I like it.
And he uses L'Arpège, another Parisian restaurant, as an example.
What did they do?
They separated their cold food prep from their hot food prep.
Okay.
And they drastically reduced their order errors.
Because everything was more organized.
Exactly. Less confusion, fewer mistakes.
Makes sense.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about efficiency.
Yeah.
But Maurice also emphasizes that a well-designed kitchen is not just about efficiency.
It's about the people who work there, too.
Exactly.
Their well-being, their comfort.
He says a happy team is a productive team.
Absolutely.
And he's a big advocate for ergonomic design.
Oh, that's important. Especially in a kitchen where people are on their feet all day.
Right.
So what are some of his ergonomic recommendations?
Well, he says that you should raise the height of your work surfaces.
How much higher?
About 8 to 10 centimeters.
Okay,
It might not seem like a lot,
Yeah.
but it can make a big difference in preventing back pain.
that makes sense.
And he also suggests using hanging rails to keep things within easy reach.
So you don't have to bend and stretch as much.
Exactly.
Smart.
And he has this great example, Le Jules Verne.
Another Parisian restaurant.
Yeah. They implemented variable height worktops.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So each staff member can adjust their work surface to the perfect height for them.
Personalized ergonomics.
Exactly. And they found that it really improved both staff comfort and productivity.
So everyone's happy and they're getting more done.
Win-win.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Layout, flow, equipment, ergonomics.
But there's one more area that Maurice really emphasizes.
What's that?
Receiving and storage.
Ah, the unsung heroes of the kitchen.
He says that intelligent inventory management can make a huge difference.
Okay, in what way?
Well, first of all, it reduces waste.
Right, because you know exactly what you have and where it is.
And it makes your whole operation more organized and efficient.
You're not wasting time looking for things.
Exactly. And he has a couple of really interesting ideas about how to do this.
Like what?
Well, first of all, he recommends using connected scales.
Connected scales, what are those?
They're scales that are connected to the internet,
Oh, I see.
so you can track your inventory in real time.
Wow, that's high tech.
And he also says that you should store heavier items at waist height.
Makes sense.
Easier to lift, less risk of injury.
Safer for your team.
Exactly. And he has this great example, Le Bristol.
Another Parisian restaurant.
Yes. They reduce their food waste by 15% by digitizing their inventory.
That's impressive.
And they use color-coded shelves to make everything easy to find.
So they're using technology and visual cues to improve their efficiency.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about efficiency, but what about sustainability?
Well, Maurice is a big believer in eco-responsible waste management,
Okay.
and he says it can actually save you money.
Really? How so?
Well, if you're not wasting as much food, you're not spending as much money on food.
Makes sense.
And he recommends incorporating eco-friendly solutions right from the beginning of your kitchen design.
Not as an afterthought.
Exactly. And he has a few suggestions.
Like what?
Well, he recommends waste shredders
Okay.
to reduce the volume of your organic waste.
Less to haul away.
And composting.
Yeah?
He says you can even partner with local composting companies.
Turning waste into a resource.
Exactly.
And he mentions a restaurant in Berlin, Silvio.
Yeah, they recycle 90% of their waste.
90%? That's amazing.
They work with a local urban farm.
So they're really closing the loop.
It's a great example of what's possible.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about equipment.
The tools of the trade.
Maurice has some really good advice about choosing the right equipment for your kitchen.
What does he say?
Well, he says that you should choose your equipment based on your menu and your culinary style.
Not just based on space or budget.
Right, because the right equipment will make you more efficient, and it will improve the quality of your food.
Exactly.
And he has a few specific recommendations.
Like what?
Convection ovens,
Great for small spaces.
versatile, efficient.
And induction hobs.
Energy efficient, fast heating times.
And he has a great example from Italy, Osteria Francescana.
Osteria Francescana, isn't that a Michelin-starred restaurant?
It is. And they cook 70% of their menu in a 12-square-meter kitchen.
12 square meters, that's incredible.
It's all about having the right equipment.
So quality over quantity.
Exactly.
All right, so we're almost done.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But there's one last thing we need to talk about.
And that's preventive maintenance.
Keeping those machines running smoothly.
Maurice says that equipment failure can be a nightmare for a restaurant.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So he recommends a few things to prevent that from happening.
Like what?
Well, first of all, he says you should train your team on basic maintenance procedures.
So they can spot problems early on.
Exactly. And he recommends weekly deep cleanings.
Keep everything in tip-top shape.
And he has this great tip about storing your equipment manuals in the cloud.
So everyone can access them easily.
And he uses Noma, a very famous restaurant in Copenhagen, as an example.
Yeah, but that's like one of the best restaurants in the world.
They save 10% annually on equipment costs because they have a preventive maintenance contract.
So it really pays to be proactive.
Exactly.
All right, so that's it for Maurice's insights.
Wow, that was a lot of information.
It was.
But I think the main takeaway is this.
What's that?
A well-designed kitchen is essential for any successful restaurant.
Absolutely.
It's about efficiency, it's about teamwork, it's about the well-being of your staff.
And it's about sustainability.
Exactly. And I think all of the examples that we've talked about today really show that.
They do.
from tiny kitchens in Paris to Michelin-starred restaurants in Italy.
It's all about smart planning and intelligent design.
So as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with this question.
Okay, what is it?
What's one thing that you can do in your own kitchen right now to improve either its efficiency or the well-being of your team?
That's a good question.
I encourage you to think about it.
Maybe make a list,
Yeah, and start exploring some of these ideas.
because even small changes can make a big difference.
That's right. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.